Hello, screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens. Today's episode, I have thoughts on Austin Kleon and sharing stuff. My name is Glenn Gers, and I am the Chief Operating Everything at Writing for Screens, a channel which is trying to give you some skills and tips and tools that might help you in your efforts to become a writer and write for any type of screen. This stuff is things that I have discovered for myself over the years in a 25-year career writing for TV and movies. I have tried to, on my way out of the business, I've tried to give you a couple of lessons, little 10-minute videos where I try to distill down what I had to figure out for myself in learning how to do this very strange craft of screenwriting. A lot of these lessons, I think, also are very valuable for any kind of creative work, including writing fiction, novels, whatever. But the main thing is I have put all of these little lessons on. Here's a capture of my screen, my channel's main page. And if you look down at the bottom, you will see a bunch of playlists. In the first 3 of these playlists, Screenwriting Essentials, Screenwriting Tools, Skills, and Craft, or The Process, Being a Writer. Those 3 playlists have about 50 10-minute videos, 10-ish, in which I've tried to keep things really clear and simple, just some things for you to try out, because some things will work for you and some things won't, and that is okay. There is no right or wrong way to do art. You need to figure out what kind of art you want to do and what kind of world there is for that art and what kind of skills you have and what kind of methods work right for you. And you can only figure that out by absorbing as much as you can and trying as much as you can and then making your choices for you. So I urge you, I beg you, take a look at these 50 videos. They each have a very clear title and thumbnail, so you can just say, oh, flashbacks, what's he have to say about that? Genre, character, dialogue, all sorts of stuff that I hope that you will check out, because really, that's the best of what I have to say. So when I am not doing that, I will come on live every Wednesday, if I can make it, at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. During these live streams, I will take on a different topic each week and also answer questions if there's time. So I've been away for a month, and I'm glad to be back. Hello, some hellos. Hello, Pelicans. And hi, Narrative Love and Sonia. Yes, I had a nice time. Not really a vacation, but a really nice time. Hello, Nathan and Jens and Ming. Hello. Hello, Ming, who's in Brazil. Hello, Donna. Hello, Meaning Bites. And Donna, great to see you again. Okay, hello, everybody. So today's episode is going to be a bunch of stuff I gathered over the past month when I was taking some downtime, scrolling around the internet. And as a result, I was like, ooh, that's a good thing. Or, ooh, and I wanted to share it. Didn't have my weekly live stream, so I put them aside. So I'm going to talk about that, but I'm also going to talk about the very concept of sharing, of putting stuff out there. Hello, Thumper, and Joni Doe Shadow. Hello, Doreen and TT. Yes, I had an extremely productive time off. Thank you. Hello, Hyro. Very productive time off. I will talk about that more next week, actually, when I do a catch-up on working on my novel, because that's what I did much of the time. But today I want to talk about the idea of sharing, putting things out on the internet, stuff you find from the internet, but especially this concept of sharing brings me to this guy, Austin Kleon, who I want to strongly, strongly recommend. He is a guy who wrote a book, has written a couple of books now, and this book that I first saw is called Steal Like an Artist. And I learned a lot from him about ways. It's very, very simple stuff, short chapters, simple ideas, presented in a graphically interesting way, in an interesting format, which opens up the mind. you can do things in different ways. It doesn't have to look like every other book. He then followed that up with a really cool book called Show Your Work. So these things, Austin Kleon's books, Steal Like an Artist, Show Your Work, extremely good. I cannot emphasize enough how worth it is to buy these books. The way you can buy them, obviously Amazon is great. He also has his own website, austinkleon.com, and he has a Substack. I'll be talking more about Substacks. And his Substack is really great because every week he puts out what he calls 10 things worth sharing, which is just stuff he thinks is cool that he wants to share. Sometimes it's an experience he had. Sometimes it's some music he listened to or something he read. Anyway, I really, really urge you to sign up for that Substack. You can get the 10 things free. You don't have to pay for it. But I would also urge you to buy his 2 books. So that's the thing is, and one of the things he talks about a lot is the importance of putting your stuff out there, not necessarily even monetizing it, not necessarily thinking, oh, I'm going to get the big win, just sharing. The whole point of your work is that you want people to see it. And we are living in an extraordinarily rare moment when there are these ways to put your work out there. Will it get seen by a lot of people? Probably not. But that's okay because it's more than 0. Okay. And you never know. You could work. I worked on this particular channel with 36 people watching, 36 subscribers for over a year. Then I kept putting out material every week so that there was a body of work, and in which I got to really explore the concept of doing a channel. And then I went out, I put myself out there a little more. I managed to get very lucky on Film Courage. And now there's all of you folks out here, including, hello, Marcus. Marcus just finished binge watching my novel, right? So thank you. I am so glad. There's going to be a lot more of that coming. Anyway, the point is that Austin Kleon makes a very good point, a message about the importance of sharing, whether or not you are winning the internet or trending or getting big numbers or big money. The important thing is the value of you creatively, the value of you being able to put your work out there, learn from whatever responses you do get, learn from the experience of putting it out there so you get familiar with that, and growing and developing instead of saying, I've got to strategize and manipulate. Just put your stuff out there. I beg you to read those books. So one of the things that's happening now, one of the places that you can put your stuff out there is this site called Substack. It is the YouTube of writing. It's the place where people can create their own channels, their own Substacks. It's basically an online publishing platform. And there's a lot of them now. And usually the option is you can have a free one where you get some of the messages. If you want to get access to more things, there's paid versions. This is a cool idea. This is a valuable thing. Just like with YouTube, there's so many millions of people out there doing this that it's difficult to wrangle up some eyes to see your stuff. But people do it. And it is doable, and you never know, especially if you have a realistic sense of scale and not having to compete with the number one. But the main thing is now more and more when I am on social media, people will refer to some quote from a Substack. And some of them just knocked me out. So I collected them. I want to talk about a couple of them here. First of all, there was an article, it was about scientists. Scientists using blackboards to do their work. They're talking about the fact that even though we now are in a world where you can share things online, you can share screens, you can do all this stuff, physicists apparently still like to stand together and write on a blackboard. And the interesting thing about that, which I think refers not just to physics, because one of the things about a group of people standing around a blackboard is it's a group of people. You're collaborating, you're sharing, you're exploring your ideas and trying to understand them. That's cool. Not everyone can do that, not all the time. But the thing that was striking was they quoted from a book called the author of a book called The Imagination Muscle. And this guy, Albert Reed, said, "You don't imagine something first and then write it down. It's through the act of writing that ideas make themselves known. Scientists at blackboards have thoughts that wouldn't come if they just stood there with their arms folded." This is really, really important. This is a really valuable thing to remember. And that is the act of doing creative work of any kind, writing, drawing, playing music. The act is how you get the ideas, is how you get the feelings. You don't think of stuff or feel stuff first and then write it. You get it while you're writing. And in fact, the act of writing makes it happen. Or makes it happen in a form that is transmissible. You may get feelings and ideas all the time. They're not going to be in a form that anyone else can experience until you are writing it down. So I beg you to remember that even if you don't feel like it's worth it, or if you don't feel like your stuff is good, or if you don't have anything to say, the act of writing it down on a blackboard, on a pen and paper, on a screen, on a phone, doesn't matter. What matters is the act of doing the work creates the ideas and feelings that are going to be in the work. I have found that this, for me, is the only way I can get past various creative problems. So big plus for that. This is weird. It's not a Substack I've ever read before or ever read again. I don't even think that was. I think that was on Nautilus or something. Anyway, another quote that I really liked that came up to me this month was from a writer named Hanif Kureshi. Hanif Kureshi is a novelist and screenwriter from Britain. In the 80s, he was really big, 80s and 90s. He did the scripts for a movie called My Beautiful Laundrette, which was wonderful, and for one which is very hard to find, but I urge you to snoop around because it's almost impossible to find a copy of this movie, called Sammy and Rosie Get Laid. Sammy and Rosie Get Laid is perhaps on YouTube, perhaps the full movie for free. Anyway, I haven't seen it actually in decades because you can't see this damn thing. I'm going to actually rewatch it. I just found that it's on YouTube today. But it had a big effect on me in the late 80s. It came out in 87. It's just very creative and personal and cool. It was cool then. Who knows if it's still cool now? But anyway, Hanif Kureshi, highly respected writer. Apparently, a couple of years ago, I think, he was in Rome and he tripped on the sidewalk and broke his neck and was paralyzed from the neck down. He now has a Substack, a blog, in which he talks about his life and his ideas and his experience of becoming a person who is cared for all the time. It's really great stuff, and I like it a lot. But there was just this one quote that just leaped out at me as like, oh, I want to share that. I want you guys to hear this. That's what happens to me a lot. So he wrote, "The idea of finding one's voice can be misleading, as though it were a destination rather than an experiment. There is no stopping when it comes to voice finding." This is really valuable. Please take a note. Take a note of this because it's really a good point. First of all, your voice will change. Literally, your voice will change over the years. But also your creative voice, your creative vision, what you even want to do will keep changing. You don't lock it in and solve it and then work and monopolize it, and merchandise it. That's part of, just like the writing it down part, it's part of what you do on a daily basis to do art, is you figure out what voice does this work need? What voice do I feel I need to do right now in this world and in my story, my progress as a writer, as an artist? Maybe you've been doing the same thing for a while and you're feeling an urge to do something different. Whatever it is, your voice is going to keep changing. And that's that's part of the pleasure is finding it continually. So I just wanted to urge you to think about that. Likewise, another thing I just came across on social media, and I clicked on the link because I loved the quotes I saw from it. A teacher in, I think, Britain, maybe Canada, I'm not sure. Her name is Sarah Leavitt, and she did a talk for the UBC School of Creative Writing graduation. I've put a link to all these things down in the description here. This is a lovely graduation speech from Sarah Leavitt. And she starts by talking about how she always loved drawing and doing her art, but she wasn't taken seriously. She didn't feel like she didn't do it that much, and she didn't feel confident of it. And she didn't get into art school. And she felt like, oh, I guess I'm just not an artist, which is not true. And then she had this quote. She said, at a certain point, she realized, what if I had thought about it all differently? That it wasn't about being an artist, but about working at art. That the important thing was to write, to draw, to cartoon as much as possible. Like, I'm a creative worker, and this is my work. This sets aside the gigantic and perhaps irrelevant question of, what am I? In favor of the more answerable, what do I do? Or what do I make? That's incredibly valuable. And it also sort of intermeshes with the Kureshi quote, because the point is, what I do or what I make is not just one thing. It is a process. You can do a new thing. You can do a different thing. You can do a thing better. What you do or what you make is within your control. What you are is partly defined by how other people perceive you, perhaps, or it may not be something that you feel like you can change, but you can change, you can create your stuff you do, and that looking at it as a worker, looking at it as work you do, not who you are, is incredibly protective, self-protective, and ennobling and exciting and inspiring. You just will find yourself doing better work and having a much better time doing it if you stop thinking about what am I and think about what am I doing. Anyway, so let me do some quick hellos. Hello, Adam Lum and Michael Tanaka. Hello, Germany Football Rocks. I will get to questions in a bit after I am done. Likewise, I hate Jackie Chan. I'm sorry about that. I don't hate him. I love to write crazy wartime scenario. I like the Bridge of the River Kwai. Did I find my voice? Hold on. I will get, well, first of all, yes, if you love it, you found your voice. Hello, Tifur Rahman. Hello. I'm very glad that you are here. Welcome. This thing about did I find my voice, that's what we were just talking about. The answer is, and also Sarah Leavitt talks about this a lot, the way you find your voice is by finding things you like to do. The more you feel joy in the doing of them, the more you will want to keep doing them, the more that you will, because you don't solve creative problems with one work. Even if you are extremely talented and extremely lucky and you manage to do something which is both popular and commercial, and those things get picked up in some way, that still doesn't solve the question of what you are going to do next or how well you do it. That's going to constantly be changing. So the answer is, if you love a crazy wartime scenario, then yeah, that's your voice. That's the answer. That's the thing to do. Maybe that may not be the thing you do for the rest of your life, but it's the thing that you need to do now because your voice is telling you, this is interesting to me. This is fun for me to solve. This is fun for me to do. I like this thing. Even if I do it badly, I like that it exists. That's what you're looking for. I urge you to click on that link below, Sarah Leavitt's graduation speech. It's really good. There's a lot of stuff in there. She's talking about the importance of just putting stuff down, getting stuff out there. Same thing that Austin Kleon talks about. But also she says, I'm just going to read this to you. I didn't print it up. I don't think it's news to anyone that it takes a certain kind of resilience to be a creative worker. There's so much rejection, so much losing, so much not getting the award or the grant or the job or the likes. It's hard not to get super jealous, to wish you had someone else's career, to despair about your own work. That's definitely been a huge struggle for me, so how do we avoid being full of envy for others or condemnation of ourselves? Maybe it helps to think about what will happen if you never win anything. No awards, no grants, no millions of followers. Are there other reasons that will keep you going? Maybe the discipline of being a worker, maybe joy. Maybe being super aware of how it feels to make your art in your body, in your heart. Maybe also it's about feeling like you're part of a larger whole, so that when someone you know wins an award, you feel joy for their achievement instead of, or maybe at the same time as, sadness about not getting it yourself. The thing about this award thing, that's okay. But what I think the main question is the question of success, which I have talked about often. Instead of thinking about success as a zero-sum game or as the way that you decide whether your work is good, what if you think how cool that someone else got success because they put a cool thing out there for you to enjoy? That's the main thing. It's like, how cool that these people are putting this stuff out there so that you have a bigger playground to play in. It's not all your playground. You are just playing your game in that playground. And instead of thinking about it as, oh, I need to be like them, which do you really want to be? Honestly, like if somebody said you could have someone else's career, but you don't get to do the work, like somebody would just award you with someone else's success, would that gratify the reason you are doing the work? Why you want to do art? No, it wouldn't. You want to do your art and you want to be rewarded for it. But suppose you could get the rewards but it wouldn't be your work. How would that feel? I think if you think about it, you'll realize, oh, I actually would not want that. So please consider for yourself this idea that the point is not to define yourself or gain things for yourself. The point is to do a thing, to do some work, to create something, and to put that out to the extent that you can. I'm going to get to your comments in a minute. I just want to finish with two more little quotes or stories. One of which is from an actor who's recently been celebrated, but he's getting older. He's middle-aged by now, named Coleman Domingo. He's an amazing actor and has done some really fine stuff. But he was talking about in his early days when he was working in New York. He was bartender in the West Village in New York. This is a sort of a shortened version of this story. It was from an interview he did. I was a bartender at a place in the West Village. I would do whatever play that I could and then run across town and start my shift and go until 4 a.m. When things would clear out, about 1 a.m., I was playing music and writing about what was happening in my life. His parents were ill. He was in different places. I lived in a terrible situation, illegal sublet. I was just hustling. I didn't have a great agency, so I couldn't get opportunities. So I started writing about my life and about the music I was putting on. The bar owner said, "Hey, Coleman, I want to do some theater projects on Sundays. Do you have anything?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me try this stuff out." I would do weird things like serve fried chicken and put on music and make a sort of salon, and then I would read these pieces. Friends would go, "I think it's a solo show. You're the event." So I started working with the director, and it became a show. I found my voice as a writer. People started to see me as the artist that I was and gave me some new footing for my career. Now, I feel a little iffy about sharing stories where somebody says, I was having a hard time, it was bad, I did this thing, and I won. But that's where the interviews are going to be with people who are, successful. the main thing is, in this situation, he created in the place he was. He was at a bar, and when nobody was listening and no one was looking, he would play music, or sing songs, or eventually put on plays, put on shows, put on performances. There was no reasonable expectation that that was going to become successful, that was going to change his career. But doing it was, first of all, the first step towards any possible success. And second of all, the best thing you can do under any circumstances if you want to be creative, find a place, no matter how weird or inappropriate or unrespected, and do some work. That's the key. Likewise, there's a guy named Justin Barker. He has a Substack, it's a link down there, called The Most. But there was a little story. He got laid off. He was working in educational television for adults. He worked in production. He was working with big professional crews on big professional shows. He got laid off from his job. And he had always loved TV for kids. When he was a kid, it was his escape from his life, from bullying in his life and things like that. So he's out of work, and the world has changed, as I keep begging you to recognize. And he decides to do a DIY production by himself of a kids show that he's going to create. It's called Show Me Howie. There's 3 15-minute episodes now that are on Substack. I'm not even talking about whether or not you like it or whether or not you want to do that. I don't have any idea of how successful it is. Someone was passing on this little story online and I saw it. But the idea that he was like, you know what, I can, within the reality of working in a room of my house with a camera and a puppet and some cardboard sets that I'll make myself, he went online and found a professional puppet maker to make his puppet. He found people he knew from his old job, but the point is creative people who he could perform with, so that there was a guest on each show. And there were tech problems. There was a learning curve. The point is, he did it. He took the situation where he was stuck, and he found a creative outlet, and that is everything. That is everything. So to sum up, I just want to talk about the basic idea, because one of the things about this is I'm talking about these things on Substacks that are coming at me on social media because somebody shared it. And that's a sign of what our reality is right now, which is we are trying to create in an era of too much content. There is just too much stuff out there that we need to read and watch and see. There's too many shows. There's too many things to read. Every single website and magazine and newspaper is putting out daily updates every hour, all sorts of stuff. So there's just too much stuff out there, which means your creative work is likely not to be a hit. It's really important that you understand and accept that reality. The fact is, if all you're doing is putting on a play in a bar and all that is seeing it is 20 people, that's okay. That's still your reality and you're getting to do it. And you never know what you can do with it from there, but you need to start by not thinking of the thing you're doing as a way to get to an other thing. You want to think of the thing you're doing as a thing you are doing to work within your reality, whatever it is. If it's COVID trapped, if you're unemployed and working from home, if you're working in a bar, whatever it is, you do what you can as who you are with what you have right now. Don't wait. Don't look for permission. Don't compare yourself. Just do what you can right now. That's my message for the day. Now I will start to interact with our questions. Okay, so first is from Germany. Football Rocks is keep writing satire, a voice. Do you mean writing satire? Is that a voice? If it's yes, it certainly can be. Within satire, you're going to find your own version of it because there's different types. Your way of doing satire is your voice. So the answer is yes, that certainly could be. Your voice is a mixture of technical things, the style, the form, which is also influenced by your reality. Once again, in other words, if you're Kevin Smith and you're working in a convenience store and you want to make a movie, your voice is going to be something really low budget and DIY because that's what you can afford to do to have a voice. And then within that, you have your style. You're very talky. You have almost no words. You are doing satire. You are doing tragedy. Whatever it is, your version of that. Stephen King taking horror classics and then transforming them into contemporary reality, into the contemporary everyday high school and small towns and people having to work in hotels in the mountains. That's each person will find their own mixture of content and form and method, and that's your voice, and it keeps changing. It always changes, but there will be certain things, certain stylistic things or certain emotional things or content that you tend to come back to. But sometimes what you want to do is switch it up. You've been doing tragedies. You want to do a musical comedy. Cool. Okay. Thank you, Donna, who loves the quotes. Creativity is a dynamic flow. Yes, everything is constantly changing. We are not locking things in and setting them. We are doing a thing right now as best we can. Ming says, if you were beginning and had found a Glenn Kurz to learn from, what path would you take today? That's an interesting question. So here's the thing. Most of what I did, I'm very happy with what I did, mostly. If I have any regrets, a lot of my regrets would be that I did not have this advice. So I spent too much of my time trying to do what I thought would be successful. Now, admittedly, it took me a long time to manage to be successful in the reality I was in, and I did manage that. The trade-off was I didn't do a lot of other things that were personal to me, that were available to me, but I felt like they weren't the most likely to get me in with the top success. Now, I did okay successfully. I got to say, I was very lucky. I was very hardworking, and I was very determined. But looking back, I kind of wish I had spent more time doing what I could do, building my own work up. As a result, what happened was I finally got to direct some movies pretty late in life. And by the time I got to direct them and learn the lessons that you get from doing it, I didn't have the opportunity to do more of them. So I had a bunch of things where I did things, I got to do it once, and then I really didn't get to do it again. But at least I got to do it, so that's cool. But if I had gotten the chance to direct again and again, or work on TV staffs again and again, I would have done it better each time and done it differently, and that would have been exciting. So the answer I would say is, what path I would take is what I'm giving you now. Which is to say, certainly try to succeed, try and figure out the game, the business, the whatever it is at the moment. That's a very narrow path in which you also have to be very lucky. And not everyone can manage it, even if you are immensely talented, even if you're incredibly hardworking. You still could just lose for a million reasons. So what I'm saying is, take some of your time, ideally try and take half of your time, and do things that no one can stop you from doing them. Do them in the most safe, you're not going into debt, you're not damaging yourself, you're just having fun and putting stuff out there way. One of the things that happened is technology changed. If I could do things now, if I could have done then what I could do now with making movies and shows with a home camera and putting it on YouTube, I would have done that. It was hard. It was harder. Anyway, so my answer would be what I would do if I was me starting out and I was also me putting out this information. I would listen to me. That's what I would do. Thank you, Glenn's fan clubs. This is your voice is saying you like them. That's good. But I also want you to use your voice for your stuff. Hello, Odd Aval. Yes, I like that it exists. That is very, very, very important. Getting stuff out there, having it exist, that is very important. Sonia says, I have an author's voice as the narrator of the story, but I struggle finding different voices for characters. They don't all sound the same. Any tips? Yes. I did a whole Q&A about this. I'm going to put the answer in a link in the description of this video about 10 minutes after we get done. And I talk about it there. And also, please do look at my videos on, character. I mean, honestly, the dialogue video and the character arcs video and character. Those all have some stuff about voice, about that. But my main answer is the more that you think about the specifics of that person and think about what they are trying to do, I suspect you will begin to give them, they don't all have to sound different. Like, they don't have to have very distinctly different uses of language. Everyone in an Aaron Sorkin movie talks alike. Everyone in a Oscar Wilde play talks alike. That's okay. You define your character's voice more from their action, from their dramatic action, which is why I was talking about character arcs. That's really, someone is defined, their voice will come out in their relation to the other characters. So that's what you need to think about, is their relationships. Okay. And I will, like I said, put a link to that other video down below. Narrative Love says, I am finishing a book about events that happened to me. I would like to write a screenplay based on the book. What advice would you give? How would you start the adaptation of your own book? That is interesting. I have done that. I wrote a novel which didn't get published back in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And I did turn it into a screenplay, which didn't get made. One of the things you need to do is think of the book as an object, not as, you don't have to protect it. You do need to translate it. You need to find the film version, the dramatic version, the cinematic version of whatever it is, which may mean radically rethinking it. The good thing is you know it really well. So I would suggest making an outline, a new separate outline of the script version, and then start to ask questions. Which things are filmable and which things aren't? What techniques could I use to film this stuff that may or may not be filmable? Those would be some of the things that I would suggest. I also think I did something about rewriting. But I guess my answer would be, you're trying to look at it not as the job is not to reproduce the experience you had before. The job is to turn that experience that you put into the novel into a cinematic, into a dramatic, into a filmable, actable version. And sometimes it'll be quite different. Okay. Why do you put go write something at the end of the video? I would start at the beginning. Because if I said go write something and people took me seriously, they would shut off the video and they wouldn't hear what I had to say. So, so I put it at the end as a way to say, we are now done and I need to turn you back to your life, which is what this is all about. I remember Bruce Springsteen once talking about his concerts and saying he felt like his job was to get people all wrought up into the moment of the concert and then to turn them out back to their own life. The point is not to make you interested in me or dependent on me or looking to me. The point is for you to take what I'm giving you and turn it for you, to do your version of it. So I say go write something at the end, partly just for practical reasons. Like if I started with, hey, go write something, and people clicked away, I would feel foolish. Thank you, T.R. Caggiano. I appreciate that. Okay. Last month, Thumper did not write a word, but did factorize all the numbers up to 10,000. I don't even know what factorizing the numbers is. I don't think it counts. I got to tell you, I don't think that counts unless what you're writing requires factorized numbers. I would say no. Sometimes it's healthy to step away. It is healthy to clean the bathroom and shop for dinner and do your laundry and do whatever it is that's good for you. But I would say then you try the next day to do a little bit of work and then factorize away. Hi, Burgundy. Nice to see you. So Burgundy's asking about Sonia, telling her, think of who your characters are and how they would naturally speak. Yes. If they are different enough to have interesting interactions, they should have distinct ways of expressing themselves. That is true. But once again, there is a stylistic argument to not worrying too much about that. But the other thing I would say is think about, as Burgundy said, think about who they are, what they are trying to do, and then that will tend to give them, some people will speak more in demands, and some people will speak more in sort of manipulative flattery. And that's going to change the style of their language. And then you can also just like arbitrarily say, okay, I'm going to give this guy shorter sentences, or I'm going to, give this guy metaphors. If you want to do that, that's cool too. But I do believe the important thing is to think about who your characters are and figure out their speech from there. Are they angry? Are they hungry? Are they tired? Whatever that is, it's going to make them talk differently. Hello, Sanchez Pablo. Am I going to write a Substack? I don't know. Not now. Maybe when I am finished with my novel and I'm starting another project that may be Substackable. At the moment, I'm not doing podcasts. I'm not doing Substack. It's just technically too much work for me, at least the way my brain works, to keep sorting things into different mediums and feeding those hungry portals. Sonia says to Burgundy, I mean that in a group of teenagers or soldiers or doctors, all have pretty much the same vocabulary, slang, I always feel the individual dialogue doesn't stand out enough. Okay, I will tell you that it sounds like, as almost always is true, the answer is in the question, which is, this sounds like it's more of a question of confidence or fear than actual technical issues. You're afraid that they are not alike enough. My guess is do the best you can and see if other people are like, oh, they all talk alike. First of all, honestly, that's not a thing that readers or audiences usually object to. They may subconsciously object to it, and obviously it's best to be as vividly unique as possible. But honestly, that's more of a critique from writing teachers or editors or whatever people are between you and the audience. Honestly, if the story's working and the characters are operating on their own needs, their differences are going to be apparent enough. So honestly, my suspicion is do the best you can and see if anyone complains about it. If no one's complaining about it, don't worry about it. Even if it's bad, if no one's noticing, let it be bad. Roberta honored me in my spec script by naming the protagonist's last name Gers and the antagonist's first name Glenn. Wow. Thank you. That's weird, but I like it. That's cool. That's very entertaining. Yes, thank you, TR. Okay. Michael says, today it seems no topic is taboo. Does controversy sell? That's an interesting question because taboo and controversial are actually different. I would say that, first of all, there are topics or stances on topics that are taboo, but that, frankly, almost everything right now is controversial. Does it sell? Maybe. I would be wary of thinking about selling, and that's it. Like to say, oh, yeah, certainly if like, let's put it this way. There is a movie about Donald Trump that got made about the young life of Donald Trump called The Apprentice, which is not about making The Apprentice. It's about when he was an apprentice to a man named Roy Cohn, who was an immensely sleazy and reprehensible lawyer for Joe McCarthy back in the 1950s. And he became a sort of celebrity lawyer in New York in the 1970s and 80s. He's also a character in the remarkable pair of plays Angels in America, which I strongly recommend reading or watching the HBO version directed by Mike Nichols. Amazing, amazing, by Tony Kushner. He's a main character in that. Anyway, the point is, there's this movie about Donald Trump learning from Roy Cohn called The Apprentice. Sebastian Stan, Jeremy Strong play them. And it was very hard for them to find a distributor because of the potential controversy. So they did find a small distributor, but it actually was quite a struggle for them. I don't know. I would say that trying to be controversial in order to stir up sales is probably foolish and dangerous. Being controversial because you are believing in something and willing to get into the fight, sure. But remember, in present times, these controversies and these the debates get ugly. They get very ugly, and they get out of control. And I wouldn't say that stirring them up is a brilliant plan. My personal take. Dominic says, sharing is good, making content isn't. Dominic D is exactly right. If you are thinking about your stuff as content, and there's like, oh, I need to fill these slots, it's going to feel like that. And so much of what comes out does feel like that. And it's degrading to the audience and to us, the creators. Like I've given myself, I'm going to do a weekly live stream. I don't think of it as content. I think of it as, what do I have to say and what would be helpful to other people? That is sharing. Okay. Talking about too much content, how can we avoid cliche? That's a good question. I would say you can't entirely avoid cliche. I would say the point is, what are you doing with the cliches? Cliche would be also things that are currently cliche will be like if you use old cliches, it's easier. If you're using current cliches, you just seem like you're a pale reflection of a better thing. The answer is finding the truth within the cliche, finding your personal relationship to the cliche, and finding the thing you want to say about that. That's what makes things not cliche. I believe, people disagree, I believe there is no such thing as a bad idea. And I believe there is no such thing as a cliche. To say two brothers who end up on opposite sides of the law, this has been done 1 billion times. It's a cliche. On the other hand, depending on how you do it, it could be good. So my answer would be, it depends on what you do with it. I think the desperate striving for originality, first of all, that in itself is a cliche at this point. And second of all, that tends to damage the value of the work. In other words, if you're more interested in being different than you are in what you have to say, it's going to suck. It's going to be interesting. It could be showy. It could be cool. But in the end, I personally think it's going to suck. Okay, Sonia and Burgundy are having a continual discussion. Right, but they are individuals within the group. Burgundy is talking about Sonia's belief that, like, if she has a group of teenagers or a group of doctors, they'll all talk alike. And that's true. But they do express their own personality and can even adapt to the person they're talking to, depending on their role or development. That's right, exactly. That's the other thing, is that people often change depending on who they are relating with, which is why I was saying the way you find a character's voice is by thinking about what they are trying to do and who they are dealing with. Let's say no more questions now, because I'm going to be heading out soon. Robert Freeman says, I may have chosen the wrong path. I would have been a great therapist. Thank you. I'm going to simply take the compliment and not explain why I would be a bad therapist. Okay. Dominic says to stay foolish if what you're making, this is about cliches. How do you avoid cliches? If what you're making is genuinely something you want to express, it's not content. Oh, we're talking about content. Yes, exactly. Content is a way of demeaning the work. If you think of it as work, if you think of it as work you are doing and a work, you'll be better off than if you think of it as content, which is what people think about it when they have a platform and they're trying to fill it with stuff to get sold. Why would a writer's voice change? Well, a couple reasons. One reason is the world changes. My voice was different in the 1980s than it is now because the world is different. Second of all, I'm different. I am an old man now. I was a young man then. And so you are going to change. You're going to learn things. If you are not learning enough to change as you go along, I worry for your ongoing value. Not to say that there aren't people who do it, but honestly, you get somebody who's like churning out a formulaic same thing all the time. Many of those things are probably going to get sort of dull, in my opinion. And I'm not saying you need to be totally different, but your voice changes in the sense that even if you're writing murder mysteries, right? You're writing murder mysteries, your feelings about those murder mysteries, your personal challenge of how am I going to make this murder mystery interesting to me is going to change once you've done it. You're going to want to do it in different ways. You're going to try and get some greater depth or breadth or speed or take on a different landscape for the same murder mysteries. I don't know. Growth, experimenting, different goals. Yes, that's also true. Thank you, Dominic. My fan club says, you seem to be a pioneer. More screenwriting teachers went to Film Courage to start their own YouTube channels about screenwriting. Well, that's, yeah, I do often, I think, probably do things a little backwards. But I don't know. The YouTube channel is just an opportunity to find an audience directly in an original way that I just felt like screenwriting books were all kind of getting boring and I could never read them. Actually, once again, Austin Kleon's book taught me a lot about the ability to think differently about how you teach, how you share things, that you can use different forms. And I would hope that we would all continue to use the forms available. Hello, I can't pronounce this, Racial, Roof, or R4Seal. Hey, hello, pink hand waving. Yes, okay, thank you. Very nice to see you. I'm very glad you're here. Have you read William Goldman's book on Hollywood Adventures of the Screen Trade? Yes, I've also read the sequel, What Lie Did You Tell? I was a massive and continue to be a massive, massive fan and student of William Goldman's writing as a screenwriter and as an essayist. Adventures of the Screen Trade was incredibly inspiring to me. I misunderstood it when I read it when it first came out. When I was an aspiring screenwriter in the 1980s, it came out, and I thought it was sort of a story about how to succeed. 20 years later, I'm in the business, and I reread it, and I realize that most of the stories are about being brutally abused and frustrated, and how difficult being a screenwriter is. And I didn't even notice that when I was in the 1980s. Both versions are great. Both versions are very valuable. Like when I say versions, same book, I just saw it differently. Anyway, I love William Goldman. I will praise his writing till the end of time. Have you read Rodriguez's book about, yes, Robert Rodriguez, who made El Mariachi. He wrote a diary called Rebel Without, I can't remember what it is. Rebel Without a Crew. That was it. Rebel Without a Crew. Robert Rodriguez, about how he made El Mariachi, which was the lowest budget indie film at the time. It's great. It's terrific. He's marvelous. I like him a lot. he's a fascinating filmmaker, and I liked his book a lot. Rebel Without a Crew. Okay. I disagree that all Aaron Sorkin characters talk alike. They are very different in some way. Yes, they are very different in many ways. They do tend to have the same rhythms and technical qualities to their dialogue. That's cool. I don't dislike it. It's actually an example of what I'm saying. Even within the technical style in which he writes, they are defined and they seem different. So I am absolutely not saying that his characters all seem alike. I'm saying that you would be, when you stop and look at it technically, how much his dialogue, people who are very different, speak in the same literate, clever, crafty way. Okay, in my opinion. Okay, good. Sonia's liking that. Michael says, it must be heartbreaking spending years writing a screenplay only to be hired to do someone else's work. Heartbreaking, yes, but only, like I said, this is really, really important. You have to understand and accept your reality. The reality is screenwriting is a job in which you are very often hired to rewrite or to write to specific orders. That's the job. That is what the business wants writers to do. They will talk about how much they want people to bring their own vision and talent and stuff. They want that within the guidelines of doing what is required by the person who is hiring you. So the answer is, it's heartbreaking if you don't, but if you think of it as like, my reality is I'm getting paid to sublimate my choices for someone else's. I'm getting paid to use my skills and my talent to accomplish their goal. That's the game when you're a professional screenwriter. Very often, at least 90% of the time, 95% of the time. So the answer would be, your heart is a lot less broken if you say, I'm doing this job and this is what this job is and I want to do this job, and I respect that they're not going to want my thing to be my way. They want me to use my talent their way. Then it's a lot less heartbreaking. Also, getting paid helps a lot. Like if you're getting paid to do something that you think, I don't necessarily think this is the best way to do this, but they want me to do it and they'll pay me. And back when I was doing it, they paid very, very well. Even at my low level, I was getting paid enough to be doing better than if I was, writing novels. So the answer is, there's a trade-off. It's the reality. Sanchez Pablo says, I appreciate the fact that your channel is one of the few screenwriting channels that doesn't do clickbaits and only analyzing popular movies. Thank you. I appreciate that too. I do it very, very deliberately, and I just appreciate that you noticed that. Thank you. That's great. Hi, Maria. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate the hearts. Okay, no more comments, no more questions. It's important to understand that a spec script is meant to be a writing sample. That's true. That very often you're writing your own work so that they can say, oh, he knows how to do dialogue. He knows how to construct a scene and create characters. Now let's have him do that for our task. Go write something at the end is the best. Thank you. You'll be hearing it shortly. I appreciate that. It really does. It means a lot to me. How about if we have a character who can't speak English comes into the play? Maybe a Mexican person. Is there a speech pattern for them? Well, obviously, yes. Like I said, if you're thinking about a character, you're thinking about what they want in the certain situation. You're also thinking about who they are. So if they learned English or they are only learning English at the moment, yes, you will need to understand how someone who is learning English and speaks another language as their first language would speak. That's part of the task of defining a character. Someone who is a lawyer tends to speak, at least in professional circumstances, differently. They tend to speak more formally. Their job, their upbringing, their emotions, those are all things that create a type of technical language. Shorter sentences, longer sentences, more, fancy words, less fancy words. Robert McBride, hi, says, I like to quote you used once, take the steps and the path will appear. Thank you. Could you elaborate a bit more on this? Yes, I can, and I actually have in a video called Small Steps. That the idea, please take a look at that. Honestly, the answer is you can't figure it all out before you do it and then operate according to the plan. Part of the work you do, because writing is not filling in the blanks of a thing. It is not fitting a formula. It always is going to be, to a certain extent, creating a new, unique thing. And as soon as you are doing that, you have to figure it out partly as you go along. That's why we do drafts. That's why we have what I call the spiral process, where you come around and do it again, and you do it again, and you think about it. You see it differently. When you work on it, you discover things. On the other hand, for me, it's too hard to go in with no plan. So I like the idea of setting a rough plan, figuring out where you think the path is going to be. For me, that's about the actions of the characters. And then know that as you do it, if you can't quite figure out something, sort of do the best you can and move on, because you'll come back to it. Or you stop and say, well, this isn't working. I need to figure out how to, and you may have to ask a lot of questions and make changes. And then the path may veer a little, or the path may just get clearer. But the answer is, you will encounter problems and questions in the middle of the process that you cannot conceive of until you are in the middle of the process. Likewise, you will not see a lot of things you will learn only after you have completed a pass through it. So the answer is, if you do the work, the answers will come from the process of walking along the path, taking the steps, doing the work. Okay. Robert, what if we have a character who can't speak at all? Would it be crazier to? Yeah, no, anything. Yeah, there are characters who don't speak at all. That's cool. That's possible. Every voice comes down to the same question: who is this person? Where do they come from? What has formed them? What are they doing? What are they trying to do? And who are they involved with? Who are they relating to? Those three elements are basically how you're going to find everybody's, quote, voice. Starting the video from the beginning, but I just want to say those two books are invaluable. Yes, regardless of how short they are. I return to them, I believe that's it, I return to them for pick me up when I'm creatively. Oh my guy, yes. These books, Steal Like an Artist and Show Your Work by Austin Kleon, once again recommending them. And oh my guy agrees. Okay. Dominic says, not sure using current cliches is bad. No, I didn't say it was bad. I just said it's more noticeable. You look more cliched using a new cliche. You can't avoid cliche. No, there's just a lot you can do with a cliche. Just don't do stuff that's been done to death. Yes, absolutely right. Burgundy says, the topic of controversial stories is quite complex. Truth. On one hand, producers want to avoid lawsuits. That's understandable. But it makes them either censor or dismiss important films. Yeah, the thing about controversy is there is in business a desire to reach the widest audience as possible, which seems like it would be to be as inoffensive to anyone as possible. That tends to make for bland work, which doesn't appeal to the widest audience. So there's this very complex cycle of impossibility there. Some people look for controversy because it's a hook. It's a way to get people's attention. At the current moment, I do personally believe controversy is kind of the norm. And so therefore, I'm not sure that it serves the value that it used to. Back in less controversial times, less controversy-happy times, a controversial take or a controversial subject matter or a controversial style tended to make it a news item. Now, I honestly just don't believe that's very valuable. But what do I know? Hello, world teller. I like the sentiment to do something old in a new way or do something new in an old way. Yes, very, very, very useful approach. Saying, well, if this is an old idea, what can I do with it that's new? Or if this is a new idea, what can I do? What can I use from the past to help make this new idea understandable? Okay. Yes, Rebel Without a Crew. That is the title of Robert Rodriguez's book. It's good. Spike Lee also did a great bunch of published journals of productions. There's one for Do the Right Thing, one for She's Gotta Have It. These are terrific books. I have never seen Zabriskie Point. I've heard cool things about it. Okay, no more comments or questions. Writing a foreigner requires knowing their background. It bugs me when people write polls with zero understanding of our culture or language. Yes, it is. Yeah, I knew that. I got you, Dominic. Yes. Yes, obviously. This comes into a larger question of, honestly, it's a question of do a good job, which is, if you're going to write about a person who is different than you, and that's pretty much every person you write about, you should take some time to think about and learn about the experience of people in their situations, whatever it is, their ethnic background, their nationality, their religion, their personal family story, all of those things. And you're going to have to choose those things. Now, you're not going to do an encyclopedia of information, but you will. And remember, different people from the same country or culture will often be different. You know, not all people from New York are alike. Not all people from Ohio are alike. So what you're doing is you're trying to filter the things that are true about those experiences and choose the ones that you feel fit with that particular character. When you do that, you tend to do a better job. Okay, Jacob. Hello, Jacob. What would you recommend doing if I'm in the middle of outlining and set up more of a beat sheet and starting to feel too boring? Two things. I would recommend try writing a little bit of it. Try writing just some rough draft of the parts that you do know. I would also recommend when anything gets boring, you need to try to do two things. One, try something else. Try coming at it from a different angle. That's the first thing when things become boring. Is the next thing is try to get down into the action. If it's boring, you may not be really tracking the characters. You may not be involved enough in the characters and their story. But if you're getting frustrated or bored, try writing stuff. Try taking a scene that you've already outlined or one that you haven't outlined yet and writing a rough draft. That will get frustrating, but you'll also come up with some cool stuff and that will inspire. And then you go back to the outline and then you go away from the outline. That's all okay. The answer is when things get boring, first of all, try to change your approach, your method, your technique, your phase of the things. And the other thing is dig into the texture, the characters, the action. The more that you can involve yourself in the people, the less boring it's going to be. So that's what I would say. Okay, I gotta go. Thank you all for being here. I hope that you will all see me next week and go write something.